They say inflation is going down, but groceries are still very expensive. So we need to make every dollar count, especially if we're on a budget. Using ground beef can help us do that. It is still one of the cheapest cuts of beef out there, especially when it goes on sale. What used to be cheap before isn't so cheap anymore. Here are my favorite ground beef recipes. Asian pasta, beef bulgogi rice bowl, Loco Moco, saucy beef and zucchini. Remember, we don't have to be good cooks to make good, delicious food at home. Try these 4 simple food ideas that will help you eat well and save money. So today we're going to change this ground beef into something Asian, something fusion, because we're going to serve it with spaghetti. We have just over a pound of ground beef, and I'm going to add just a tablespoon of oil. I'm just using vegetable oil. 2 teaspoons of Shaoxing wine. We just did a video last week on some basic Asian sauces, and you can find out more about Shaoxing wine and what I use to substitute there. And also 2 teaspoons of soy sauce. And we're going to add 2 teaspoons of cornstarch. Okay, and I'm just going to use my hands to mix all this up because it's easier than using chopsticks even. You all know I love using chopsticks. But, you know, with pork, there's always the, oh, you got to stir it in one direction because it creates the strands of meat. You want it to be kind of sticky that way, but I don't think that's the case with beef.
All right, you science nerds, correct her if she's wrong.
Okay, you don't want to over mix it just until all the ingredients are incorporated. I'm just going to set that aside while I prepare the rest of the ingredients. Okay, I'm just going to make some sauce and set that aside. I have a cup of beef broth. I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of oyster sauce. 1, 2, and 2 tablespoons of dark soy sauce. And 1 tablespoon of brown sugar. And give it a stir. And we're going to set this aside. I'm using 1 giant clove of garlic. Look at it, it's humongous.
It's giant. So
you can probably use 2 or 3 cloves here. And I'm just going to chop it up. I'm just using half an onion. I'm just going to cut it up into slices. 1 more. There we go. I'm also going to chop up some green onions for garnish. You know what would be really good in here also is if you have some ginger, if you like ginger, and or cilantro, you can also add that. But I thought I had some in the fridge, but I do not. And that's what I find making the best recipes come when you just have to figure out what you've got in your fridge and how to put it all together. And that's how this recipe kind of came about. Especially nowadays, I'm finding groceries so expensive. I want to be able to use up every little bit of whatever I have in the fridge and not waste it. You know, it wasn't good wasting it before, but now it's even more crucial. Okay, heating this up on a medium heat. When I was in high school for a few months, I lived with my great-grandmother, and she would make me this snack using ground beef and cooking it with spaghetti. And I have really, really fond memories of this, but hers was not so fancy. I think she just used oyster sauce and ground beef and tossed it with some spaghetti, but I loved it. So this is kind of homage to my great-grandmother, but I've kind of changed it up a little. I'm using my wok today. Once you see the wisp of smoke, add a tablespoon of vegetable oil. And if you don't have a wok, you can always use a large frying pan. And we're gonna put all the meat in there and cook it up. I just wanna get like a bit of a sear on the bottom before I start moving it around. So once your meat is cooked through, you can move it to the side of the wok, which is what I like about using the wok, and throw in your onions. And I'm also finding that groceries are so expensive and meat has gone up so much in price. So ground beef is still, you know, less expensive compared to steaks and all the other cuts. And sometimes you just want a little bit of meat. So this is it. Ground beef for days. This won't last for days. This will only feed my family one meal. So once the onion has cooked through a bit, just add your garlic. And then just stir it all together. And if you're using ginger, you can add it with your garlic, or even adding chili flakes, or even fresh chili if you want. That will spice things up. Use what you have. I'm gonna add my sauce into the middle. I'm just waiting for that sauce to heat through. I'm gonna make a slurry with a tablespoon of cornstarch. With 1 to 2 tablespoons of water. And remember, your water has to be room temperature or cold so that the cornstarch will dissolve. And once the sauce is bubbling, then add your cornstarch slurry and stir that around. And then cook this until the sauce starts to thicken.
Oh, that smells good.
Uh-huh. Okay, I'm gonna add my spaghetti now. That's cooked. I just cooked it on the stove. Come on, get in there. And this is why a wok is necessary.
Oh, this would spill over on most frying pans, I think.
So this was a pound of spaghetti. Okay, don't forget those green onions. Okay, I'm turning the heat off now. Oh my goodness, it smells and looks so good. I think some cilantro in here would be yummy.
If we had some.
If we had some. I know, I thought I had some in the fridge. And we did not.
Guys, this is the reality of what we do.
Reality, life with Flo. You get what you get. You don't get upset. Okay, we're just gonna get a plate ready for Dude's taste. This is actually his dinner, so it's going on a big plate.
Oh yeah. Don't hold back, girl.
Look what I just did.
Oh,
what a mess. I'm a gong show.
You are not a gong show.
Right, a little bit of garnish for you, Dude.
Thank you.
I have half an onion that I'm just gonna chop up. You can totally use this recipe with steak if you like. I would use a flank steak because I find that very tender. You can cut it very thinly. But using ground beef is just gonna have to do for now. I also have some very wimpy green onions here. So I'm using 4 very wimpy ones, but you can just use 2. And I'm just gonna cut up the white part because I want to add that to the onion when I cook it. I don't really like the rawness of the white part of green onions. And the rest of it I'm gonna use as garnish. Moving on to the sauce, I have a very small piece of ginger that I'm going to grate, and you want about 2 teaspoons. More or less is totally up to you. I'm just going to grate this into my measuring cup because that's where I'm going to make my sauce. I also have this monster-sized piece of garlic.
What is going on there?
I think I bought elephant garlic instead of regular garlic, so they have these giant cloves. So I'm just going to use 1 giant clove of garlic, but you can use 2 cloves or more or less, depending on whether or not you like garlic. And I'm just going to grate this right into my measuring cup as well. You can use a garlic press if you want, or you can chop it up by hand. It's totally up to you. Using a 1/4 cup of soy sauce. It's just regular soy sauce. 1/4 cup of brown sugar. About a tablespoon of mirin. And mirin is a Japanese sweet cooking wine. And a tablespoon of sesame oil. Okay, just stir it all together, making sure that the sugar is dissolved. So this sauce is like sweet and garlicky and savory and gingery all at once. This could be so good. All right, set this aside. We're gonna get cooking. That was it. Okay, heating up my pan on medium. And if you have a wok would be really great to use to stir up all of the ingredients. But people have been asking me to use my large frying pan to show them how I maneuver the food on a frying pan versus a wok. So that's what I'm doing today. I'm using my cast iron frying pan. And same sort of philosophy in terms of cooking. With a wok is you wait for that puff of, or that whiff of smoke to kind of indicate that it's hot enough, and then you add your oil. So I am using a tablespoon of neutral oil, cooking oil. I'm using, I think, vegetable oil today. I'm just gonna add my onions and the white parts of the green onion. And we're gonna cook that through. It'll take about a minute. We just want the onion to be translucent. And if you want to add some spiciness, you can add some chili flakes. I'm just using a large pinch of it. It's probably about 1/2 teaspoon or 1/4 teaspoon. You can add as little or as much as you like, or you can omit it altogether. Okay, and I'm adding about 1.5 pounds of lean ground beef. You can use whatever ground beef you like. Break it up so that you can cook it evenly. It's going to take about 3 to 5 minutes to make sure that the beef is cooked through. Okay, once the beef has done cooking, you can see that it has released a lot of liquid. So we're going to burn that liquid off, but before I do that, I'm just going to add the sauce because all of that extra liquid is also going to burn off. It smells so good, you guys. I wish you guys could smell this. So we're just going to cook this until all that liquid burns off and the sauce will absorb into the beef, and the oil that is in there, or the fat, will also crisp up some of the fats so that you get all this like just delicious texture when you eat this in your rice bowl. So I'm just going to let it simmer until all of the liquid, well, most of the liquid has disappeared or evaporated. Ground beef is so versatile, but often what I find is when I'm searching for ground beef recipes, I come up with meatloaf or meatballs or hamburger. But really, you can add whatever flavors you want to ground beef, and it can be whatever you want it to be. And it's so much more exciting than meatloaf, don't you think? All right, so most of that liquid is gone, and now you see that it's just mostly fat. So I do want it to crisp up a little bit more. I was stirring occasionally to try to get that liquid to burn off faster. And now we're going to let it cook for another minute or two, to get that meat crisped up. I don't know if you all can hear the difference in the sound that the frying makes versus earlier when we were just evaporating the liquid. You can hear the sizzling of the meat in the fat, and that's what you want. So we're probably at that point now where we can take it off the heat. If you want it to be a little bit crispier, you can certainly cook it a little bit longer, but I think this is good. All right, I'm turning it off. So during the cooking, the sesame oil aroma would have been burned off. So I'm gonna add another couple of teaspoons of sesame oil to add that aroma back into the dish. Give it a stir. Then we'll plate it up with some rice for dude. And don't forget the green onions. Adding that. Stop. Just stir that in. Be back with the rice. All right. I'm gonna top it with some roasted sesame seeds. A little bit of garnish. And there you have it. I am using about 1.25 pounds of lean ground beef. You can use regular ground beef, whatever you like. 1 tablespoon of soy sauce. 1 tablespoon of oyster sauce. And if you don't have oyster sauce, just use another tablespoon of soy. 1 teaspoon of brown sugar. And the sugar is just to balance out the flavors. If you don't want to add sugar, don't add it. Some pepper. And maybe about 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And we're just going to mix all this up. After you've mixed up the beef really well, I am going to divide it into 4 burgers. So they're approximately 5 ounces each, maybe 5.5. And we're going to form 3/4 inch patties. Set them aside. So you can cook these however you like, on the stovetop or on the grill. We don't have a grill, so we don't like cooking hamburger patties on the stovetop because it just splatters and makes such a mess. What we like to do is sous vide our burgers. So I'm going to show you how to do that today. But if you don't have a sous vide device or you don't know what I'm talking about, you can just use the stovetop or the grill. All right, I use the Joule device. And what I like about it is that it gives me a visual of what I'm looking to cook. So for a burger, I would like them medium well. And so I'm cooking at 147 degrees Fahrenheit. And I set the time for fresh and for a 3/4 inch patty. And I just start it. I'm putting 2 patties in a large Ziploc bag. 2 in the other one. The sous vide device is actually one of my go-to devices to use in the kitchen. I love sous videing steaks and pork chops, things that are generally tough to cook when you're using the stovetop or baking. It's never quite the exact, I guess, texture that I want it to be, and it's not as juicy. So once I started using a sous vide device, oh my goodness, it makes such a difference. And using it for burgers doesn't make sense, seemingly, but it works really, really well. It only takes 22 minutes to get these burgers cooked to the exact temperature that I want them cooked to, and we just torch them afterwards so that we get the browning on top, and it's so much cleaner. There's no splatter to clean up, it's just done. So once the water is heated up, I'm just gonna submerge these patties right in I haven't vacuum sealed them or anything, but the water pressure will push the plastic against the burgers. And you have to make sure that your food is completely submerged so that they can cook through properly. And I just start my timer for 22 minutes. I'm going to cut up 1 small onion for the gravy. So while the burgers are cooking, I can work on the other things. And another thing I love about the sous vide device is that you can't overcook whatever you're making, because even if I'm cooking for 22 minutes, I can leave it in that water for another 45 minutes without the burger overcooking. It'll just keep it at the exact same temperature as it's been. For the gravy, I have about a cup of beef broth. I'm adding 2 tablespoons of soy sauce and 2 teaspoons of Worcestershire, and 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. Cornstarch will just give you this translucent gravy, as opposed to using flour, which gives you kind of a creamy gravy. Just want to make sure that the cornstarch dissolves. I'll have to give this a stir again later, but I don't want any lumps in there. And remember, cornstarch only dissolves in like room temperature to cool liquid. If you use hot liquid, it's not going to work. It will just lump up on you. All right, we're just going to set that aside. Okay, I'm going to use the same pan for my eggs as well as my gravy, so I'm going to get started on the eggs first and set them aside. Turning my burner on to medium-high heat, adding about a tablespoon of vegetable oil. I'm going to do 2 eggs at a time. Okay, I'm just going to cook until all the white is cooked through and you get a nice crispy bottom. Right, I'm just going to season with a little bit of salt on each one. And transfer them onto a plate. Perfectly cooked eggs, look at that. And once you're done your eggs, turning the heat down to medium, adding 2 tablespoons of butter, unsalted butter. And we're going to get our onions going. You just want to cook it for about 2 to 3 minutes until the onions are a bit translucent. All right. I'm turning the heat down to low, and we're going to add our gravy mixture. Just give it a stir, make sure that cornstarch at the bottom is fully dissolved back into the gravy. And we're just going to cook this until it turns a dark brown. Oh my goodness, it's going to be so good. I wish you guys can smell it. Do you see that color changing? It looks so good. All right, once it is bubbly like this and thickened, you can turn the stove off. All right, I know they don't look like much, but they're perfectly cooked inside and out. Okay, maybe not on the outside just yet, because we still have to torch them. But I'm just using the paper towel to kind of pat down any moisture on there.
And that's just going to allow a better sear to happen.
All right, now the fun part.
Yeah.
Torch is not super powerful, but it does the job. And it's great because it just fits right onto the butane canister that I use for my butane stove. All right. Oh my goodness, it looks so, so good. It smells amazing.
Can't wait.
Okay, make sure you get some nice jasmine rice on a plate. I'm gonna put this burger right on top, this patty.
Oh yeah.
Cover it with some gravy. And a fried egg right on top.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
And a sprinkling of chopped green onions. I'm going to start with marinating my ground beef. So I have a pound of ground beef. I'm adding 2 teaspoons of cornstarch. The cornstarch is used to velvet the meat, and actually in this case it does help with thickening the gravy a little bit more. So the cornstarch is great for that. Adding 2 teaspoons of soy sauce. This is just regular soy sauce. And 2 teaspoons of rice wine. Now you can use Shaoxing wine here. The recipe in the book does call for Shaoxing wine, but I just decided to use a rice wine today. They do have a little bit of a different flavor, but you can use whichever one you prefer. And I'm adding a tablespoon of vegetable oil. I'm just going to mix all this up by hand, and we're going to let it marinate for about 10-15 minutes, just enough time to get the other ingredients ready to go. Okay, I'm just going to set this aside. I'm also going to prepare my sauce. I have 1 cup of beef broth. I'm going to add a tablespoon of sugar. Just want that to dissolve. So adding 1 tablespoon of dark soy sauce. And dark soy sauce is, well, darker than regular soy sauce. And it just adds to a deeper, rich brown color. And I'm adding 3 tablespoons of oyster sauce. And the oyster sauce is where we're going to get most of the flavor that we want in the sauce. If you're allergic to oysters or you don't want to use oyster sauce, you can find a vegan form of oyster sauce that is made out of mushrooms. You just want to stir this up, and we'll set this aside as well. When you have all the basic Asian sauces like I used in the recipe today ready to go in your cupboards, dinner will be delicious every single time. I'm using a very small onion today, and we're just gonna cut it up into, I guess, cubes, because our zucchini, I'm gonna cut up in cubes. So with the peas in the recipe, I chopped up the onion smaller because the peas are smaller, and it's all about the mouthfeel. So we're gonna keep these pieces about the same as the zucchini, and that will improve the mouthfeel. I have 2½ cloves of garlic, well actually 3 cloves, but it's just a little one. And I am going to take out the little sprout that is sprouting inside, because my mother-in-law told me that it actually adds a bitter flavor, so I'm just going to remove it. It's really easy to remove. It comes right out, just like that. Oh my goodness, the cats are gone nuts.
I think they have the hangries.
Oh my Lanta. Okay, and then we're just going to chop it up. I hope you guys can see that it's really easy to just adapt to my recipes. You don't have to use everything that's listed in the ingredients, and oftentimes I can't even follow my own recipes. So it's good to just use ingredients that you like to use, but you can use the recipes as a guideline. Okay, just setting that aside. And I'm using 1 large zucchini. Well, it's not that large. My grandmother used to grow her own zucchinis, and sometimes they're like the size of a baseball bat.
Wow.
I guess this is a normal size zucchini. So I'm just going to cut them into about 1-inch chunks. Okay, heating up my wok on medium-high heat. Okay, once you see that wisp of smoke, that's when you add your oil. I'm adding a tablespoon of oil. I'm gonna toss my ground beef in there. I'm gonna flatten it out a little bit and just let it sear on one side, just for about a minute. If you don't have a wok, you can always do this in a large frying pan, but I like to use the wok because it just gives me enough area to stir all my ingredients together. Try to sear the other side as well before moving it around. This just adds a little extra flavor to the dish. It's not essential, but it just, like I said, adds a little bit more flavor. You know, people ask me about my wok all the time, and unfortunately, I bought this wok in Chinatown over 20 years ago, and it is handcrafted stainless steel, and it is stainless steel, not carbon steel. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to find one to recommend for you guys, so as soon as I do, I'll let you know. Then we just want to cook this through. Okay, I'm going to turn off the heat. Just going to remove the beef. And we're going to set that aside. Okay, turning the heat back on to, I'm going to turn it down, well, turn it up only to medium now. And we're going to put our zucchini and our onions in there. We're not adding any more oil because there was enough oil coming out of the beef and from the vegetable oil that we added earlier. I'm just going to stir fry this for about 3 to 5 minutes until the vegetables are tender. While my vegetables are still cooking, I'm just going to make a cornstarch slurry to thicken the gravy. And so I want about a tablespoon of cornstarch, about a tablespoon of cool water. Remember, your water has to be cool so that the cornstarch will dissolve. It won't dissolve in hot water. All right. Veggies are looking very tender. I'm going to add my ground beef back in. I'm going to push the mixture aside, and we're going to add our sauce. And wait for that to simmer. Oh, I totally forgot to add my garlic.
Oh.
It's sitting right there too. Okay, don't be like me. Remember to add your garlic before you add the beef back in. I'm gonna put it to the side where I can see that it's still sizzling. Maybe try to cook it up a little bit. That's fine. You'll heat up with the sauce.
It'll be fine.
It'll be fine. All right. And adding the cornstarch slurry back in. Not back in, just add it in. And give it a stir. And that'll thicken up the sauce. And that's it, look at that. Turning off the heat. And you can see that the sauce is thickened nicely. And we're just gonna put it back in that bowl that I had the beef in. Serve this on top of rice. And it'll be so yummy. Okay, I'm gonna add a 1/4 teaspoon of ground white pepper and a teaspoon of sesame oil. And there you go. Oh my goodness, it smells so good.